Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast. And as part of our Unsung Hero series, we are going to have a conversation with someone that has done something amazing that, again, if we had had this conversation, I know I would have known about it. I don't think you would have either. This is Jill Knowles, and she's a fantastic communicator. She really is. In fact, behind the scenes, she's talking about starting her own podcast, which we want to encourage because we think she could do some great stuff on her own. Today, we're glad to have her as a guest on the Good News Podcast. She's talking about just an unbelievable trip of a lifetime where she went and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. But she didn't just go to do a climb, which in itself would be a significant thing. She also went and served for a week and helped build homes for women there to be empowering women, helping women get a life together, to start a business, to have a place to live. So there is so many elements to this incredible individual, and we're going to get to hear about that in this Unsung Hero story. Friends, welcome to the Good News Podcast. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast, and we are so excited about this summer series we're doing called Unsung Heroes. And this is someone who, as I said in the intro, is just got so many dimensions to her life. I can't wait to get into this conversation. This is Jill Knowles, and Jill, thanks so much for being a part of the Good News Podcast today. I just love who you are and what you're doing. And let's start with like this incredible trip. It's a trip of a lifetime. Where you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Tell us a bit about that, and we'll just going to go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and I love talking about this. I've probably told this story a million times now, it seems, but it's such a great story. So I actually went with a group of people I didn't know. So it was 6 people, and the travel group was called Impact. And so they always have this sort of challenge component to it, which was Kilimanjaro, but I also volunteered for a week. So there's usually a volunteer component in it. So we volunteered for a week first in Tanzania with a women's group. So the foundation is called the Dare Women's Foundation. And we built a house that's meant to be a shelter for this women's group. So it's not done yet, but in a week, the foundation was laid when we got there, and then we were able to build up the bricks, the cement bricks, and we put the mortar on and all that kind of stuff. So we got to the top. So there's no roof yet, but we were able to build the structure. And we worked with, we call them the mamas, but they're all the sort of the leaders and the women in these groups. And so we hired them for the week to come out and cook for us and hang out with us for the day. And it's very interesting because I don't speak Swahili. They spoke minimal English. But there was this huge connection there, which was really great. So the trip was kind of like 3 parts. There was this part, which was super rewarding. And then there was the climb of Mount Kilimanjaro, which also was another week. And then, and that was rewarding in a totally different way, which I'll tell you more about. But, And then I did a 3-day safari at the end of it, which was just fun. It was nice to kind of wind down after the hard work.
I love the multiple dimensions of this trip and the purposefulness of it as well. It was just want to kind of go back to the serving part and building. What was the home for that you were building, and what's life like there in Tanzania, right? So what's life like there, and why was it important to build a home like this? What would be the understanding and hope of the impact of this?
So the foundation is called the Dare Women's Foundation, and it's led by this wonderful woman, Maggie. And essentially, these women are on their own, usually with children. So they've been through a domestic abuse situation. They've been divorced. The husband has left, and now it's the mom with the kids left, and they weren't the primary moneymaker before. So this group provides them shelter and a place to live, as well as gives them business loans to start up their own businesses. So they showed us how they make money while we were there. And so they make these sort of footstools out of big plastic water bottles because recycling and garbage is kind of an issue there, right? And so they would reuse as much as they can. They would make art and jewelry out of beads, and some of them would go to certain areas and buy produce and then, resell it at a better area. So whatever the business is that they wanted to have, usually some sort of they were making something. This foundation will lend them the money to get started, and then they have a very long time to kind of sort of pay back that loan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's like transformative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these women were so incredibly grateful too. And then they become sort of the matriarchs of this organization. And so as new women are coming in, they mentor them and help them.
Okay. Yeah. Amazing. And I know women empowerment is a big piece of what's at your heart and passion about. So really want to get into that. But before we do, got to talk about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was that like? How far is it? How many days does it take?
It is just under 20,000 feet, 19,350, something like that. I forgot exactly. But it's a lot. It was way more than I expected.
Really?
I knew it was going to be a trip. I mean, it's a 7-day hike, and
It's a 7-day hike.
Yeah. So you sleep in tents on the side of the mountain, and it's more of a hike than a climb, but there are days where you are physically climbing, just not with climbing apparatus, but
you're
you
walking up at a fairly significant elevation.
You have to kind of use your hands and crawl up, and so there are difficult parts to it. So there's definitely a training aspect involved, but you're not showering for a week. You're not sleeping very well for a week, and it's also very cold. Like it's minus 15 at the top. Our first night was actually very cold. I think it was about 8 degrees the first night, which I didn't expect. I thought we'd have like 3 days of warmth, and then it would get colder as you increased in elevation. I think the fastest person in the world has climbed it in a matter of hours. So the reason you do 7 days is not because it takes that long. It's because you're also acclimatizing and trying not to get altitude sickness.
Yeah.
So especially, for us here in the GTA, we're, I don't know, a couple hundred feet above sea level, maybe. It's, you have to adjust to that. You actually take medication called Diamox, which is to help you with altitude, help you not get altitude sickness.
Okay. Yeah. So, but you had to train for this, I assume. Eh? What was that like getting ready for, preparing for?
So I would say at least 6 months, and I would do hikes in my local area, like sort of on the Niagara Escarpment, through Halton, Milton. But I found that wasn't helping me as much because I didn't find it challenging. So I knew that we were going to be walking on quite a bit of an incline. So I did a lot of hill runs with a weighted vest and and the other thing is each day you're hiking about 8 hours and you're going at a very slow pace. In Swahili, the word is pole pole, which means slowly. And so they're constantly telling you to slow down because you need to so that you have the strength and that you don't get altitude sickness. But you're hiking for 8 hours a day. So you need to sort of have the stamina. So I would try and do some longer hikes in preparation for that and do something on an incline like the hill runs or things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 times a week I would be doing this.
Wow. And like, are you an active person generally? Is that something that...
Yeah, I would say I am. I sort of get off and on. I mentioned
welcome to
that
the
I had
club,
run the Around the Bay race in March of 2022. But then I haven't run since then because then I was training for this. So it was more of a hiking component than a running component. So I have that athleticism and the drive but I felt like I got into way better shape having this sort of stricter routine around it.
Yeah. Man, I'm just really intrigued by this whole experience. What were some of the highlights? I'm thinking of the hike in particular. We'll come back to the empowerment of women, which what a huge. I just love that you did that as part of this trip. But the hike itself. What were some of the highlights from the experience?
You know what? On the mountain, it's so beautiful and it's so quiet. There's no cell service, so you don't have your phone for a week. You're really just connecting with other people. Some of them you don't speak the same language as.
How many would have been on the trek?
So my group was 6,
Oh,
but every
wow.
night all the groups would camp at the same
Okay.
site. So there were different sort of areas of sleeping. And I bet you there was I would say about 100 travelers there. But just to put it in perspective of how many porters and guides there would have been, for our group of 6, we had 12, 3 guides and then 9 porters.
Okay.
So you've got quite a bit of support because
Yeah.
they're carrying up the tents and they go ahead of you, set up your tents,
Mm.
your food. They carry your big heavy packs in your sleeping bag. You're just kind of carrying a day pack.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff to carry. So you need a lot of porters. And they're carrying food too. Like when you first start, they're carrying water and food
Sure.
and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So highlights, so there were a lot of people, but getting the connection with all these
Mm.
different people,
Mm.
it was so incredibly beautiful and quiet. Like
Mm.
you can sometimes just get lost in your phone or the day to day or
Absolutely.
social media and all that kind of stuff. So just it really forced you to step away and just enjoy the beauty and nature and other people and connection. So that was a huge highlight. The trip as a whole was a highlight. So just kind of stepping back on why I did the trip. Um, I wasn't in a great place, and some of this ties into the women empowerment part too.
Okay.
But from a
Yeah.
confidence perspective,
Mm.
I felt like I needed something. I didn't
Mm.
know what it was, but I felt like I needed something. And
Mm.
so this Africa trip, a friend of mine had done it, the same trip with this Yugo Impact group 2 years before, and she was like, "It was life changing." I was like, "I need something life changing."
Wow.
So I had signed up for it, got delayed a few times because of COVID, but I knew that I needed something to just sort of, you know, pick up my confidence and just
Yeah.
something I could feel good about and proud about. And so after the whole trip was done, like after the climb was done, it was like this huge feeling of like, wow, if I can do that, I can do anything, right?
Really? So it
So
really was
yeah,
significant for you personally, how
yeah,
you felt about yourself, life, future.
yeah,
That's
absolutely. And
cool.
you have a lot of time to think because you're hiking for 8 hours a day. And the first day or two, you're chatting with everybody, and then you're
Yeah.
just sort of tired
Yeah.
and don't really want to chat. So you're just kind of thinking and walking
Yeah.
for 8 hours a day.
Well,
So
I like to who goes without their phone
I know.
or like other than when you're sleeping, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that really counts, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like who goes out without their phone for like 7 minutes,
I
let
know.
alone 7 hours,
Yeah.
let alone 7 days?
I know.
So
I
what
know.
what what was that? What was that like? My sense is probably on your trip, you're not really missing it,
Yeah.
but what was the impact for you afterwards? That even like what was that like? Not to
Yeah.
have that constant information flowing in and out and reacting to people, and that you
Yeah.
get the endorphins when you get something in, and but yeah, like yeah. So what was that part of the
It
experience
was,
like?
I don't know, like very relaxing because
Yeah,
this is a high-paced world and I have
yeah.
a high demand job and I have 2 little boys and I just find
Mm-hmm.
everything moves very fast. And when
Mm,
things are really rushed, makes me anxious. You mentioned about the constant information, notifications on your phone.
mm-hmm.
I wear the Apple Watch because I like to track all my steps, but I also find it distracting when you get a
Yeah,
notification on there
yeah.
saying, "Oh,
Ding.
someone texted you," or you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh," like it just takes your thoughts away from the moment. So
yeah.
it was so easy to be just in the present moment there because there weren't any distractions, and it just felt really easy and very relaxed. It was like, "Okay, let's take a little snack break," and it's just you're not sitting
Mm,
down to pick up your phone. You're sitting
yeah.
down to like think about what you're eating and have the time to not scarf it down or quickly drink something because you got to move on to the next thing. Like you could
Mm.
actually take a break, be in the present moment.
Wow, which is so rare, eh? And
Very rare.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and it strikes me that sorry, what was the word for slowing down?
Pole pole.
Pole. It was
Yep.
more than just the pace of your hike, it sounds like, eh? Just the
Yes.
even though you're doing this, it's interesting because it's almost like yeah, like you're doing this significant, really, really big thing,
Yeah.
which kind of gets you energized and jacked up for,
Right.
but you're slowing down in other ways as far as not only the pace, but just
Right.
very different, very different week for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And emotionally too, because
Yeah.
when you get closer to the top, I mean, you've now gone a few days with, very little sleep. you're freezing, you're a bit more emotional. It's just the wear and tear of the trip towards the end. I did get altitude sickness. So for me, even with taking that medication, I had the worst migraine I've ever had and felt like I had the flu. And so I couldn't eat. I couldn't stomach anything. So I'm trying to do the last night, you do the final push to the summit. And so that's the hardest part of the trip when you're literally at your worst. And so there's this huge emotional component of it. And so as I was walking up there and you're just thinking like, I'm never going to get there. It's never going to happen. You feel defeated. And they were saying that pole every minute, it seemed like. And it was like, it's okay. It's okay. You'll get there. Right. And so it was encouraging at that point. And it was like, we all looked very tired. Few of us were crying at this point. Right. And so them saying pole was not just slow your actual steps. It was like, just slow down.
Yeah.
You will get there.
Yeah. Relax.
Like believe that you in yourself and in the universe that you will get there. And, just let go because there's nothing else you can do, but just kind of keep moving forward.
Yeah. Relax.
Yeah.
Take a breath. Yeah. Encouragement too. The word was bringing encouragement, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness. Okay. One more question.
Yes,
So what did you do when you got to the top? Like, what was that like?
Oh my gosh.
What was that feeling like? What? Yeah.
It's very anticlimactic.
Okay.
So everyone said, and I don't know, maybe this is how the movies portray it, but everyone said, when you got to the top, did the clouds part and this beam of light came down on you and you were like, ah. And I was like, no, not at all. And I do think people have that moment. I did not. I had it after, but in that moment, I was so sick. I almost quit a few times. But when I finally made it, I said to my hiking partner, who we kind of stuck together, her name's Helen, I said, let's take this stupid picture and get out of here and head down. Because I was so I didn't want to be there. I felt so sick. And you also have a 4-hour hike down now after you've just hiked 8 hours through the middle of the night in minus 15-degree weather. And it's freezing at the top, so you don't want to like hang out there.
No.
The sun was out. It was beautiful, but I was up there for long enough to take a picture and then headed down.
Okay.
So whenever I tell anyone that, they're always like, oh, that doesn't sound great. But I will say, once I came down in elevation and I started feeling better physically, then I started having, I don't know if you call it an epiphany, but I was just like, wow, like the weight of what I had just done and the connections I'd made and the gratitude I had that my mind and body allowed me to do that really hit me. So it did happen. It just happened about a day and a half later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh boy. Well, I mean, I know, we hardly know each other. We just, met today and so glad that we have, Jill, but I was like, I'm really proud of you, man. Like I'm really proud of you. That's that's an amazing accomplishment. And I
think I was proud of myself too, which came as part of the confidence piece because that was really hard.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I remember at one point when I was at the very last stage, probably in the last hour, and I said to my hiking partner, Helen, I said, I would rather have 3 more babies, like a birth to 3 more babies, than do this again. Like I found it harder than that process. And so when you say, you're very proud of me, I was very proud of myself.
Awesome.
And that did give me a lot of
Yeah.
confidence and belief in myself that I think I was missing before.
Yeah. Can we talk a bit about that? Like, how did that confidence? You've done something really, really hard. Not that you've had kids, so you've done hard things before, but this was in almost another category for you. So like having done something really, really hard, how did that translate? How is it translating to your life?
Yeah, it's translated to a lot of different areas. The kids, you asked me about the people there and what they're like. I mean, so kind, and they have nothing. So, me coming home to my kids who have, the newest, Nintendo Switch and video game system and bikes, and they don't have any of that. And so the gratitude coming home was the piece that I really held on to. And then that feeling of, gosh, if I can do that, I can do anything. And so things didn't seem as hard anymore. So if I got into a situation at work that might have stressed me out before, I felt like I was just like, Jill, you just climbed Kilimanjaro. This isn't that
Wow.
difficult. So I was almost talking myself out of a
Sure.
difficult situation, saying like, it's not that difficult. You're not climbing a mountain. But with my
Where
kids,
yeah.
just being really present, having a ton of gratitude, and sharing the experience with them too.
Yeah.
Like when I told them, there's one day we were playing with these kids in the neighborhood, and as soon as you come to a neighborhood, a lot of the kids don't go to school there. So there's a lot of neighborhood kids that are out playing, and they see the tourists. And so then they run over to that house. And all of a sudden there's like 15 little kids running around. And we were playing a game of dodgeball, and they don't have any balls. So they had a bunch of rolled up socks into a ball. And they played with us. And we played with them for about an hour. And I've laughed so hard, and they laughed so hard. And like they were serious about this dodgeball game. And
Nice.
I just remember being in that moment, like, they're having so much fun,
Yeah.
and I'm having so much fun. And this is a ball, like a rolled up ball of socks,
Mm.
so you can have fun and have that connection without the material things.
Wow. So many lessons, and to bring
Hmm.
back.
Yeah.
Incredible. Incredible. So the empowerment of women, like that was obviously a big part of the trip,
Yes.
but my sense is, Jill, that's been a part of your life and a part of who
Hmm.
you are, and something that you're rightfully so really passionate about. I hope we all are. Right?
Yeah.
I feel like we should be,
Yeah.
and want to continue to work towards a much more equal
Hmm.
world that I believe
Hmm.
God intended us to live into and
Yeah.
be. Yeah, tell us a bit about where that comes from, that piece of your life,
Yeah.
and how you're trying to live into that for yourself, but also for others.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I think it wasn't until I was in my late 30s that I realized I was missing a big part of that for myself. I've always been a very strong, independent person, but I don't think I had a lot of the self confidence. I think girls and women grow up with a lot of these sort of societal pressures, that kind of make it into our adult life, and then may not be our strongest selves getting
Mm.
into our 20s and things like that. So
Mhm.
I realized that I was part of that group, and I didn't like that, and I had a lot of insecurities around that. And so I actually did therapy in my, well, it would have been, I guess, in my late 30s. Went through a bit of a family situation where I, it seemed to be chaotic at the time. And so I did therapy, and through that realized, like, oh, I'm learning a lot about myself and
Mm.
and strength and inner strength and confidence that I guess I didn't really realize before. I didn't have that. And so once I had it, I felt really empowered. And then I'd see colleagues and friends struggling with the same thing. And
Mm.
so I just felt like I need to be there for you, and
Okay.
I want to
Yeah.
help. And I am someone who finds it truly rewarding to help other people. So, fast forward a bit, and I've done a lot of that with my sort of,
Mm.
inside circle. But I work in finance, and finance is kind of a man's
Mm.
industry, and
Mhm.
and women are typically underserved. And so I would start seeing some of this with my clients who, maybe didn't manage money, or weren't given that sort of empowerment growing up,
Mhm.
because my generation is a little bit more empowered, but I look at my mom's generation
Mm.
and not at all. Like, they
Mhm.
didn't learn about having kind of power with money or financial independence. And so then it became, I really want to help my clients
Mm.
with this. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it just became about like instilling the confidence, not just, personally or emotionally, but then also from a business and financial sense as well.
Mm. And when you say women are underserved,
Yes.
can you unpack that a little bit? Because I don't know if everyone would realize, and I think that'd be
Yeah.
helpful for people to be more aware
Yeah.
of some of the
Yeah.
realities, and then hopefully get on the solution side as well. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of studies out there. And again, if you look at the big kind of population is the baby boomers. So you've got a lot of women in their 60s who didn't grow up with any sort of financial independence.
Yeah.
It's not really taught in school. I had one grade 9 intro to business class where I think we learned about like how banks work,
Mhm.
money management. I think there's a bit more of it now. But I think we could do a lot more to improve financial acumen for everyone. But I
Sure.
do think that women have been less encouraged from, a young age into their 20s. And so when I say it's sort of a man's industry, there are 10% of the advisors at my firm that are women.
Mm.
So there's not a lot of women representation, as we've learned with women's sports and women in different industries and women of color. And, their representation matters.
Yeah.
And so, that's just improving now. And then also, I would say, just having more conversations. Like it's like knowledge is power, right? And
sure.
so, but then there's the emotional part of it too, where it's money is an emotional thing. I think to everyone. I don't think that's a male female thing. I think to everyone, but I think there's more emotional ties to it with women. So if you don't have other women sort of leaning into some of the more emotional pieces when it comes to, planning around your finances for your family, then, there's this piece that's missing. And so, and I've even been in a situation myself where I felt a little bit intimidated in a room full of men who, there's a little bit of this sort of like, I know more than you know sort of mentality.
Okay.
And then I've sort of felt myself like sinking more to the back and not talking as much. And I'm like, why is that? And I see that with a lot of people.
Okay.
So a lot of companies that they're doing more for that, like bank-owned investment firms are doing a lot more for empowering women on, the banking and wealth management and borrowing side for women business owners. And I just love being a part of it because it's very rewarding because I feel like there may have been a situation with some of these women where they felt like they couldn't speak up and now they have a voice and I'm there with them. I'm your cheerleader and I can help you. And it just, I don't know. It's very rewarding to see them feel empowered.
Yeah.
So I want to keep doing more of that.
Thank you for that really important work. And I hope all of us, as we hear this conversation, realize that we all can be part of enabling that and helping with that and hearing everybody's voice and really, just kind of taking more, like you said, awareness of the temperature of the room and humility and grace. And those things are really beautiful things that can really bring us all to the table together. Right? Yeah, for sure.
The emotional intelligence part of it, the EQ that everybody talks about. And it's like, it's okay to be vulnerable. And I think that is the message that I try and put out. Like, it's okay because, talking about anything, whether it's your family or money or whatever, like those are all things that bring up these emotions. And if you can't work through that by being able to be vulnerable, then you're not sort of moving ahead. And so if I can sort of help you on that journey, then I love doing that.
Well, you are definitely an amazing person, Jill.
Thank you.
And what we're calling unsung hero. So thank you so much for that. Before we want to pray for you before we close, if I could just give thanks for this, but Good News Podcast Rapid Fire here, if we could to close off. So best thing going on in your home and your family these days.
My son's playing rugby, and that really excites me. So yeah.
That's great. Best thing going on in your neighborhood or your community.
I would say the women's initiatives that I've been involved with. I mentioned the bank-owned firms. I work with Scotia and Scotia Wealth Management, and they have the Scotia Women's Initiative, and they're doing a lot of really good things out in the community, and I get to be part of it, so it's a lot of fun.
Cool, including we were talking earlier about hopefully bringing a professional women's basketball team.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So cheering for that one with you. Hopefully, we all are. Yeah, absolutely. Best thing going on in our world.
I would say I've noticed that just general kindness and compassion. I don't know if COVID changed things or not, but people seem to be more compassionate and kind and patient than they were before. And I've really experienced that. And it fills my cup for sure to have that.
Beautiful. Cool. Oh, thanks again, Jill. And love to say a prayer for you before we go.
Thanks for having me. Yes.
Cool. Let's do that. Yeah. Loving and gracious God, just filled with thanks and gratitude for for Jill and for the way that you are working in and through her life. Thank you for the way that you led her to do this incredible adventure, this excursion, where she certainly blessed women in particular in Tanzania. Grateful for the work that was done, and pray for all of those people who we blessed by that work. And for this adventure of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, for the theme of slowing down, of being more present, of having confidence that you can enable us to do hard things, all great themes for Jill's life, but also for all of us, and for this passion around enabling everyone to have a voice, for women to be empowered, for us to be human together. We believe you desire that to be the reality in our world, and help us all to play whatever role we can in that. So thanks again for your just the life you give to us, and just all that you're doing in and through Jill's life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, thanks again, Jill.
Thank you
so much. And thank you, everyone, for being part of the Good News Podcast family. Always good to be with you. Hope to see you again real soon. Well, friends, I don't know about you, but man, like there were so many lessons from Jill's story that I found really relevant for my life. And I just love how this experience that she really felt led to go on influenced so much of her life, so many pieces of her life. That idea of slowing down, of slowing down not only on the walk up this incredible trek, but also slowing down, like not having her phone for 7 days. Like, can you? I would just challenge any of us to even try out that for a day, let alone. Can you imagine 7 days not having your phone, not doing social media, not having texts coming in constantly, just the slowing down of her life and the lessons that came with that, to be present with her family, to have confidence because she did something that was really hard, and for that to, again, really roll into every aspect of her life. That now when something hard comes up, she might have been a little overwhelmed before, but now what happens is she thinks, well, hey, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, I can handle this. I love it. When we do hard things, it builds up our ability to do more hard things. And so I'm not sure what your life is like, but if it's like most of us, you face some hard things sometimes. So I pray that you also will be encouraged, be inspired by Jill's story, but maybe we make it our own story too, because we can do hard things. God can help us survive and work through and do hard things. Friends, hope you were inspired as much as I was. This is a great individual, and we just are so blessed to have her as part of the Good News Podcast family now, as we are to have you. God bless you and be with you. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Good News with Jamie Holtum, and hope to see you again real soon.